I am not a historian, but neither are you. So, how about we the people learn this stuff together? Welcome to US 101. And for today's episode, you're going to need the following, kids. You're going to need a red bandana, some blue overalls, some work boots, and a badass attitude. With this being the last week of Women's History Month, which, by the way, is stupid. Why do we only designate 1 month for Women's History Month? Why do we only designate 1 month to celebrate Black history? Should they not be celebrated year-round? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, tangent aside. With this being the last week of Women's History Month, I figured for today's episode we should focus on a 20th century all-American feminist icon. Now my guess is at some point in your life you came across this poster and you said to yourself, hey, that's Rosie the Riveter from World War II, who would later be adopted by the feminist movement in the 1980s. To which I would respond, first of all, your exposition game is on point. And secondly, I would tell you that you would be wrong, at least to some extent. You look a little confused. Let me break it down for you.
World War II! America goes to war with her allies, England, France, and Russia, against the evil Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. We send thousands, men and boys, to fight on the front lines for freedom, while Uncle Sam's wives, mothers, and daughters stay at home. But did the ladies of the Star-Spangled Nation simply sit around and bake pies while G.I. Joe was being an American hero? Heck no!
I can't do very many impersonations, but that one I think I can do pretty well, so you may be hearing that one more often than not. So let me just quickly recap. Because so many men left the United States and fought overseas in World War II, a lot of industry jobs, a lot of factory jobs that were normally done by men were now being taken over by women. In fact, from 1941 to 1945, during the World War II period, the number of women in the workforce jumped from 27% to almost 37%. They made their way into the factories and they worked on munitions. They built planes, they built tanks. As a matter of fact, in 1943 alone, 350,000 women worked in the aircraft industry. That made up 65% of the workforce in that industry. Not to mention that during World War II, a lot of women joined the armed forces and they served at home and at overseas. They joined the American Red Cross. They volunteered for the USO. I think it's safe to say that the phrase boots on the ground very much applied to the ladies as it did to the dudes. So where did the name Rosie the Riveter come from? It actually comes from a song of the same name that was written in 1942 by Red Evans and John Jacob Loeb. His name is my name too. And the song was actually made popular by the band leader James Kern K. Kaiser, and the song became a smash hit across the entire country. As a matter of fact, if you guys want to check out the song for yourself, I put a link down below in the description box. And following the song's release, a real-life Rosie the Riveter made her way onto the screen via a government film, and her name was Rose Will Monroe. Ms. Monroe was an actual riveter that worked at a factory in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and she was filmed doing her job in the factory. That footage made it onto screen, bam, Rosie the Riveter. Then, in 1943, the famed artist Norman Rockwell took a stab at creating his own depiction of Rosie the Riveter for the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. The rivet gun is sitting in her lap, she's eating a ham sandwich, and her heavy work boot is sitting on top of a copy of Hitler's book Mein Kampf. And this image became the embodiment of Rosie the Riveter that was described in the song. And here's just a little art fun fact for you. The pose that Rosie is holding in this picture is actually modeled after the prophet Isaiah, which Michelangelo painted on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And in fact, this image became so popular during the war that the magazine even loaned it to the US Treasury Department to help with war bond drives. And for the record, I would also like to point out that if you're looking for a really, really awesome poster to hang on your wall, I recommend this. So dope. But now wait a minute, let's just hang on for 1 second. If this, as we've discovered, is Rosie the Riveter, then who the hell is this? Why do people keep calling this poster Rosie the Riveter? In 1942, the artist J. Howard Miller was commissioned by the Westinghouse Electric Company to produce a series of posters to help boost morale among its workers. And this is one of the posters that he created. But here's the thing, the name of this poster is not Rosie the Riveter. Its actual title is "We can do it," based on the slogan that appears in the poster. The poster that Miller created had nothing to do with the idea of Rosie the Riveter, the song, the government film, the Rockwell painting, none of that. As a matter of fact, he also created a ton of other posters that hung solely in Westinghouse factories and only for a few weeks. After that, they just disappeared. So if this poster is not a poster of Rosie the Riveter, then how did it become known as Rosie the Riveter? One word: copyright. Following World War II, Norman Rockwell's estate placed strict copyright on his Rosie image, and because of that, it was seen less and less by the general public. Therefore, out of sight, out of mind. But in 1982, the "We Can Do It" poster, which had less copyright restrictions placed on it, was actually reprinted in a Washington Post magazine that was doing an article on patriotic posters. Following that reprinting, the image was then picked up by the feminist movement of the 1980s because women at the time said that embodied female empowerment. The image began receiving the name Rosie the Riveter because it depicted a strong female factory worker, and the name stuck. And since then, this image has been everywhere, okay? It was made into a stamp in 1999. In 2008, it featured both Michelle Obama and Sarah Palin in the Rosie the Riveter pose. And in 2010, it celebrated Australia's first female Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. And one more fun fact about Rosie the Riveter, I should also point out that from 1985 to 1986, she was actually a DC Comics superhero. She was part of a crew called the Demolition Team, and her weapon, obviously, a rivet gun. And that is it for this episode of US 101, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. And thanks to all of you that have been subscribing to the channel, watching the videos, commenting, sharing. Guys, I can't thank you enough. Please continue to comment, share, like, and subscribe. The more you get involved, the more I want to get involved and make these videos even better for you. As always, you can follow US 101 on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Instagram. All those links down below in the description box. Guys, I will see you next Tuesday for another episode of US 101. Until then, we are all done. And I have no clever sign off for today's episode. This is awkward. I'm gonna go ponder how awkward this is. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. This is just so weird.